Welcome to the 5D Codes. I'm Sarah Teresa, chronicler of the liminal space. In this podcast, we talk about going from 3D to 5D, going from physical-based reality to a dimension where unconditional love reigns. God's timing, vibration, the frequency that you emit is the frequency that you receive. We're going to walk home together in this podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. Let's dive in. In fact, you're just dropping the masks. You're dropping the identities that the matrix, that society has programmed into you. The roles that you've been taught to play, the ancestral patterns in your DNA that you have been told you need to live by. And often these are unconscious, right? And what we're doing when we shed the light of awareness, that is enlightenment. We shed the light of awareness on everything, every nook and cranny. You make conscious what was unconscious. Nothing gets past you anymore, you know? God, the creator of all that is, I think the creator and God are two words that resonate the most with me. I guess the third one that I would use would be my higher power. And I know we say that a lot in the 12-step program. I happen to be a member of Al-Anon, but the 12 steps, the embodiment of the program is the same no matter what 12-step group you're a part of. My higher self, right, has a higher power in a sense. Like my higher self, the embodiment of that, my higher self, we could say, is my soul. My higher power, or God, or the creator of all that is, right, the so-called governing force that I'm a part of, is not judging me. The more I default to God, letting God take the lead, letting my higher power take the lead, letting the creator take the lead, realizing I've never had any power all along. That's the trippy thing. And the more I surrender these programs and my ego's idea of power, which is just suffering, really, the more seamless, the more flowy, the more graceful things are in my life. There was never anything I needed to do but get out of my own freaking way. I mean, this is like the sum, I feel like the sum of all of what we're seeking. You can read thousands of pages of self-help books, listen to audios and podcasts. Hello, podcaster here. And get to the same place. It's like all roads lead to the same place. So for some, it's just like you just need those couple sentences, that maybe that one word, remember, as Ram Dass put out there in so many beautiful ways and is still putting out there with the flags that Lama Foundation is creating, the community that he created to help people remember that your soul doesn't need to do a damn thing. Your soul needs your ego to get out of the effing way. And it doesn't get out of the effing way by killing it, right? By dressing it in spiritual garb and saying it's enlightened, because the ego is very clever and knows. I've met so many people, and I'm going to say, if I'm meeting them along my path, they're mirrors for me. So I take responsibility for this too. They know how to talk the talk, but they fumble when they're walking the walk. God, creator, source is not judging. Source is another one I like to say. No judgment. The more I surrender to that higher power, the more I feel as the divine parent. Divine parent I never had in this life, right? Because my parents were human, just like you and I, and they had their stuff. But I chose them for a reason. But when I tap into this energy of source, I feel like it's a genderless energy. It feels balanced perfectly, masculine and feminine. It's like the divine father and mother in one. It's just this unconditionally loving force that is never judging me, never, no matter what I do, think, say, feel. It is that unconditionally loving parent that most of us on this planet have not had. And there's a reason that we chose to come in to karmic relationships, karmic family patterns, meaning there was a lot to work through, right? It was not easy. And it's maybe still not easy. Because the more difficult things are, the more the ego gets wrestled around and jostled with, and the more it has to get out of its own effing way. It's got to eventually get, honestly, the addiction model is the perfect example. The ego has to, just like an addict with a drug, has to hit bottom and finally wave the white flag and say, I can't do this. And for an addict, I remember seeing this in a show recently about addicts that was really, really well done. And this was actually about teenagers struggling with addiction. And this one young woman reached out to somebody she'd met at a 12-step group, and who was like a kind of a father figure, asked him to go for pancakes because he had offered, and he, they're sitting down, and she looks distraught, and he was looking at her, and he says, okay, it must be pretty bad, because the last thing an addict wants to do is ask for help. So what's going on? It was a great opener. He was basically like, yeah, you're the last person I wanted to call. I wasn't wanting to be sober tonight. Like, I tried to use and things just didn't work out. The ego wants to control as much as possible. It wants the drug of control. We can substitute heroin for control with the ego, honestly, or your drug of choice. When the ego lets go of control and waves that white flag and says, I can't do it. Okay. Divine parent, source, creator, higher power, all that is, help me the F out. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. From that place, we can say we've hit what's so-called bottom to the ego, asking for help. Ego, I love the acronym for ego, edging God out. Edging God out. God is never gone in the realm of the soul. But for the ego doesn't like God. It's a threat. God is a freaking threat. You think God, this is ego talking to God. You think you know everything? I'm going to show you. I know how to make my life better, right? I know how to get XYZ. You think I'm not ready for a relationship? I'm going to show you. I'm going to manifest a partner. I'm going to do this and this and this. And I'm going to show you I can get the perfect relationship. And then, of course, said relationship falls apart and drama ensues. And finally, in this example, the ego waves the white flag and says, okay, gets on their knees and say, all right, I guess that didn't work. Okay. I'm not even going to try for a relationship. What do you think I need? What is best for me in this situation? And it comes back to, with the 12-step program, I love the Serenity Prayer. God, higher power, source, all that is, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I, as an ego, cannot change. The courage to change the things I can. Meaning, I'm doing it with love. I'm letting fear step aside. And the wisdom, that's the soul. The wisdom to know the difference. The wisdom to know when it's time to take the lead and take those action steps, and when it's time to get out of your own way and let God take the lead. Let God do the dirty work. Because I think we work way too hard. I'm speaking for you. I'm speaking for me. I'm speaking for all that are listening to this. This is calling in the tribe. Our vibe is attracting our tribe. And, I'm recording this after actually hanging out with my cat and my daughter, who have very similar temperaments. And my cat has been following me around like a little shadow because I was house sitting for about a month, doing various pet sits. My friend was watching her, my friend who lives next door, and she's very bonded to me. She's a Karat cat. So they tend to bond with one person in particular. They have affection towards other people, but they don't have that same bonded relationship. And my daughter really wants to get close with her. And so she walked into my daughter's room when I was in there talking to her. And she lies on the bed. My daughter had this paper on the bed. She loves the sound of crinkly paper. So she lies on the paper like it's a blanket and is like exposing her belly, feeling all safe, petting her belly. And I'm like talking to her like, hey, why don't you go talk to Ren? Go bond with Ren. And prior to that, she was on the floor. And as I was talking to her about, Ren wants to get really close with you. Why don't you go up and walk on her lap and sit on her lap like you do to me. And she was looking at me and she told Ren to wiggle her fingers because that's what works with my cat. And she got up on her legs. But the whole time she's looking at me like, you're my master, which is a beautiful metaphor for like you know, the ego, when it surrenders, when it wants to submit to God, it's like, all right, I am going to listen. And cats, as we know, well, you may know, not know. I know, if you're a cat person, have their own personalities. You can't control a cat. You know, dogs love to obey. You know, it's like that's part of their DNA imprint. You know, they're coded to be like these loyalists. But cats are so hyper independent, especially my cat. So the fact that she's looking at me and is like, I want to submit, I want to please you. Like, your ego has surrendered. Maybe it was the distance that we had. The messages from God, from Source, are there in everything. They're in our animals. They're in the music we listen to. They're in the conversations that we have. They're in the thoughts that come to us randomly. You know what I mean? It's like there's a difference. You can tell the difference between an ego thought and a soul thought. The soul thought rings through your body like a gong. The ego thought feels like noise. It feels like static. It feels like a loop. And it often triggers anxiety. So I know if I'm feeling tight and constricted, that's my ego thinking for me, right? If I'm feeling open, relaxed, expansive, that's my soul talking. I have noticed lately that there's a pattern, there's a lot of soul talking. And then all of a sudden my ego gets cringe. It's a perfect word for it. Gen Z word, right? It feels really cringy. And that cringe, it happened recently, might last for a day or two. I poured my heart out to somebody about something. They reached out to me for something, and I was inspired to share this audio with them it just popped out of me. And I had no idea how this person would respond to it. And that's my ego, wanting to know how they're going to respond, wanting to please them, wanting to make them happy. But the soul doesn't question that. The soul is just my soul channeled that message and then just sent it. And boom, it's gone. It's like when I do a podcast. It's like this is going out into the ethers. The people that are hearing it are meant to hear it. That's it. And I love that. And I love that even with this podcast, I'm not promoting it and posting something. My daughter, she was probably talking about some meme she saw. She said today, Mom, are you a Facebook mom? And I cringed, literally. My face crinkled as she said that. She's like, oh, you didn't like that? I was like, no. I said, it's funny. I let go of my TikTok and my Instagram, and I have not missed it one bit. I didn't fully delete my accounts. I just haven't gone back to them in many months. Facebook, I have 24 friends, and I actually have a note on there. I'm not on here for, building connections. I'm just on here for groups. So it's been people that I've worked with and, very minimal, because I went from 1,000 to deleting my old account to small amount, not on there for friendship. We have a great free group locally, and, there's some holistic mom group and what else? Some other local groups, and then groups of interest with different things that I'm interested in. And I don't even jump on there very much, but even as I'm talking about it, I'm feeling cringy. And then she said, oh, so you're an almond mom, I guess she called me. Maybe you know what this is. So I was like, sure, that sounds more hippie granola. Yeah, okay. I just roll with it, so I'm talking to a 15-year-old here. But it really fits in with the ego. It's the ego has these really powerful emotional responses. The ego wants to put things in boxes. Oh, you're this type of mom. You're that type of mom. I'm just a freaking mom. I'm a mom. The soul sees me as a being having a human experience, The soul drops the labels, but we need to learn to integrate with this ego. And how many, probably millions of people, are thinking about this topic or have thought about this topic over time and have talked about it. I mean, there's so much out there that you can explore on how to fully embody your soul, the awakening process, the enlightenment process. What is the ego? What is the soul? What is this God source energy? We all have to remember. It's not even figure this out. We have to remember it for ourselves. The language I speak is specific to my own soul's frequency, the song, the note that only my soul plays, right? Just like our fingerprints are unique, so are our souls. And it's going to resonate with the people that it's meant to resonate with. Hello, listener, right? And same with you. You are going to have your own epiphanies in your own way. So it's not even about like how we're saying it, like the words that I'm using, it's the vibration. It's like basically what's happening is like our vibrations are just syncing up right now. Even with the birds that are on the screen here, it's like they're part of this symphony of remembering. I think it's really a wild and trippy thing. So I want to share something that happened the other day connected to this, because I share through story. And I think hearing about other people's lived experience as a soul having a human experience is like one of the most potent ways of awakening. And I was guided to go to the library. My daughter has gotten into going to the library lately, and I'm a book nerd. I'm a writer at heart, and I just love walking through the stacks and finding books, sometimes honestly for the cover, sometimes for the title, the subject, whatever. There was this one book about, it was like, we're moving into a right brain world. I didn't realize it was actually a business book, but I was just guided to just randomly open it up as I was contemplating stuff in the morning. I kind of do like morning reading meditation and do some writing then. And there was like literally a quote about how story is like the most powerful way for the psyche to process and transform itself, essentially to remember. I thought, and I'm shaping this a little different, like shaping it to fit the podcast. I'm not quoting it exactly, but, and you know what? I can probably find it actually while I'm talking. This is the beauty of technology. I took a screenshot of it. Let's see how close I was to remembering. Here it is. Okay. Yes. And the book is A Whole New Mind: Why Right-Brainers Will Rule the Future. Daniel H. Pink. And I liked that right brain sentiment because I identify as somebody that's like almost always in the right brain, which, has its positives and growth points, I'll say. The quote says, "Humans are not ideally set up to understand logic. They are ideally set up to understand stories." Actually, all right, so let's take what I said, my interpretation of that, and plug that in. This is by Roger C. Schenck, a cognitive scientist, which is so freaking cool. He's a cognitive scientist. So humans are not ideally set up to understand logic. They are ideally set up to understand stories. When I read that this quote by a cognitive scientist, I was like, here I am, this total like right brain woman that, everything is guided by my intuition. And the stuff that I've done, traveling with very little money in the bank, just trusting on my heart is guiding me to do this and this and this, everything unfolds. In the moments when I freak out and I panic, if I'm staying in that panic or I'm staying in that fear mode, right, that I'm edging God out, that I'm in my ego, stuff seems to get choppy because I am getting in my own way. It's like, I've got to get to that point where I get on my knees and wave the white flag. And I know I'm sharing that in a dramatic way to make a point. But that's the story piece. I think what he's saying here, I resonate with it on an emotional level, on an intuitive level, right brain level, right? He's talking about the soul, like humans, as in the soul having a human experience. The soul is not set up to understand logic. The ego understands the logic. The ego is the one that can collect all these self-help books, embody or embrace all of these ideas and think it's embodying it. I can't tell you how many books I highlighted, I went through, scoured through in my 20s when I was like starting this awakening process. And all of it, I felt like just went right through me. It's like, boop. And then I'm like getting into these toxic relationships or toxic jobs. It's like my everyday life didn't match what I was trying to plug into my brain through logic with all the self-help stuff. Once I embraced story, the second part of the quote, they are ideally set up to understand stories. Once I embraced story, I started really focusing on other people's stories. And that was a huge part of my transformation process in the past decade. And that gave me the courage to look at my own story. Not that I didn't look at my own story, because I certainly dissected it, picked it apart, therapy with writing. But it was like I was able to integrate it by listening to other people's stories And this is what inspired me to start the podcast. This is like DNA level shifting. So what I feel happens, and I'm going to talk about my favorite book for a moment, Mutant Messages from Down Under, the most transformative book I've read on my spiritual journey, that I read after I was hospitalized for a major depression when I was 19 and 20. I had a couple of different bouts. After my grandmother died, I went through this major, major depression. She was like the mother figure. I felt like so ungrounded in life. And and then I lost my sister a year and a half after that. At that point, though, I had done so much of this work already. And one of my bosses at the time actually came to visit me in the hospital, presented me with this book, Mutant Messages from Down Under by Marlo Morgan. This woman it was said she went on a walkabout with the Aboriginals. There's theories that she did, she didn't. Either way, it's a brilliant book. It was like I was with this woman when she was walking through the desert with the Aboriginal tribes. They invited her. Maybe it was one tribe in particular. She went to an event. She was doing research. And they said, why don't you come with us? We're just going for 3 months. No biggie, right? Talk about learning embodiment. The way that they shared with each other was through story. Life lessons, wisdom was passed on through story. This is the oldest way of sharing as spiritual beings having a human experience. Look at the cave writing, even through images. There's something about, and I think this connects to our empathy and coming to the right brain piece. This feeling component that we are blessed to have as humans. We're sentient beings. When we hear somebody else's lived experience with something, when they're really fully embodying it, like a true storyteller is like in the story, like you viscerally feel it with them. When you read a good book, you're in it with the author. It's like you're living in their words. You're living in their words. Somebody said that to me recently when I shared some writing with them that I'm working on. They're like, I love living in your words. I was like, it was one of the most beautiful compliments I've ever received. I was like, wow, I've never heard that before. And then I read something somewhere, like some dated writing where there was a quote. So, I love living in your words. I'm like, oh, okay, it's been around a while. There's no original thought, but so everything had to start somewhere, and we're all standing on each other's shoulders. And that's the beautiful thing. That's why stories activate us so much. So this podcast is an activation. Any interaction you have in life is an activation, right? If it's just with an animal, with a tree, with your male person, it's an activation. Story, when we are fully in it, it's working us on a cellular level, So what's happening is we're activating, we're transmuting and transforming. Not it that we're changing. We don't change the structure of our soul. We strip away aspects of ourselves, right? Programs in our ego that don't serve us anymore, that aren't fully resonating with who we truly are as a soul having a human experience. It's a dropping process. It's a dropping off. It's a letting go. It's a shedding. The 12-step program, I'm going to come back to it. It's some of the steps talk about taking a personal inventory, basically healing resentments that you have towards yourself and towards others. And that's what this is too, this shedding process. It's like letting go of all of that clutter that you're holding on to that just doesn't serve you anymore. How is holding on to that grudge against your aunt from when you were 7 serving you right now? Sitting with that anger in your cells, is that making you win a war against your aunt who might even be deceased now? Is that helping you protect yourself from somebody that's not even in your life anymore? Or, if they're in your life and they're not harming you or whatever, that memory is long gone. Some of these things that we're holding on to are very menial, like when we go back to it, right? But it triggered us on a deep emotional level. And then there's other things that are huge, very traumatic, that are sitting there that we're scared to look at, right? And we can have this same fear about something really tiny and something really big. Fear is fear, When we wave that white flag and say, I can't do this alone, do I have the courage to know, what I can change and what I can't, what I have to surrender? When we ask that divine parent, like source, God, higher power, please help. I don't know how to heal this resentment. I just know that it's really heavy in me right now. It's toxic. I feel like it's holding me back. It's holding me back from feeling the joy of having this human experience, because I'm walking around grumpy and grumbling and holding on to this memory or this experience or this resentment that I don't even know why I'm holding on to anymore. Sometimes we just get used to holding on to things, When people start going through that inventory too, sometimes they pull out things they didn't even know were there, right? There's more than they expected. Well, that's what this transforming process is. It's not about shoving that stuff in a closet and saying, okay, I'm just never going to look at it again and everything will be fine. That's the ego pretending, you know what I mean? I'm going to put on my yoga robes and walk around and talk yoga, and everybody's going to think I'm fine. I'm going to think I'm fine, and I won't have to worry about that. But we can't get away from the mess. The mess was created by source too. There's a reason that we have dark and light. There's a reason polarity exists. We have to accept it before we can essentially move beyond it. We have to accept that we have this ego that's kind of a pain in the ass, right? And we have this soul that is just pure light, and they have to coexist. And that ego has to make room for that light. It's got to, and the only way it can do that is by dropping the rocks that it's holding. We can look at those resentments as rocks. Actually, there might even be a book called Drop the Rock that I came across. I used to be a therapist in addiction recovery, which was very, intense. I didn't know enough about the addiction side of things at that time. I think I was very easily manipulated as a therapist. Learned a lot since then in my codependency work, but I didn't understand that term, drop the rock, until I started doing my own inventory and understanding what the steps are about. Most of the held resentments that are in our bodies are not even about other people. They're towards ourselves, Our psyche is choosing to hold on to that crap, We have to see it, shedding that light of awareness on it, noticing what it is. Oh, there's that. I'm going to use that example that just randomly popped up. There's that resentment towards that aunt of mine from when I was 7, who told me I couldn't have a chocolate bar, and I really wanted a chocolate bar. My mom and dad were going to let me have one, but she grabbed it out of my hands. I ran up to my room and cried. Didn't come back down for the rest of the night. It was hell, and I never liked her since then. And maybe the aunt was just like, "Hey, dinner's coming. We'll hold it till then." But you didn't understand. Whatever. It was this small thing that got blown out of proportion. I think we've all had experiences like that. And to be honest, it does parallel to an experience I had with a family member that around that age, and held on to this grudge into adulthood until I looked at it. I was like, why am I so grumpy around this person? Oh my gosh, it was that thing that happened when I was 7. See, it's so weird when these examples come out of the psyche. You're like, where did that come from? For me, it wasn't an aunt, it was an uncle. And I realized in that moment, I'm like, I have no idea what was going on for my family member. There could be so much going on behind the scenes. This is where the 4 agreements is helpful, not taking it personal, understanding everybody has their own timing with their awakening, their own soul journey, and putting ourselves in this place of giving ourselves the blessing of doing the work and seeing who we are completely and looking at the rocks before we drop them. You can't drop the rock until you realize it's in your hands. and you're holding it. You're choosing to hold it. You could drop it, right? But you can't drop it until you acknowledge it's there. So shed the light of awareness on it and say, okay, this is a part of me that really sucks. I don't like that I held resentment, or I don't like that I have this habit of choosing jobs that drain my energy or whatever. Okay, you shed the light of awareness. You notice the pattern. Boom. That is like success right there. That's the first step. You ask the question to yourself, why do I keep continuing this pattern? The answer comes from the question. It's one of my favorite quotes in Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet. I read in undergrad. The English nerd in me loves to come back to this one because there's just certain passages from books, all types of books that have stuck with me over time. That's when I know that's soul wisdom. That's remembering. If it sticks in me like a seed that was like watered, and like stays planted in me, and it keeps sprouting over time. So the poet asked Rilke, I'm going to paraphrase here, how do I, trying to figure out the mysteries of life, how do I figure out the answers to these big questions about life that I have? And Rilke says the most brilliant thing that obviously came from his soul. You live the answers. You don't get the answers. This is back to that quote about the right brain. It's not about logic. It's story. There's the story. We're coming back full circle. I love this. This is a spontaneously created podcast. As I'm sitting in my living room here with the bird sounds. You live the answers. That helped my heavily thinking brain so much when I first read it. It just completely sprouted a seed. That seed in me that was there to remember was sprouted in that moment. Because I would analyze and analyze and analyze. I don't even want to say overanalyze because that's my ego judging. But I'm an analyzer. Hence, I like writing. Like thinking about life. Exploring truth. Why are we really here? What are we really doing? I am not here to figure it out. I'm here to live it out. My life is the answer to the questions that my soul has. Like everything that I'm doing, from when I wake up in the morning to when I go to bed at night, all of that space in between, all of those actions that I took, the thoughts that pulled through, the ones that I grasp onto, the ones that I let go of, all of that is part of the story that I'm creating for God, and every moment is a blank slate of creation. This feels like it went deep. How you feeling? Just like, breathing, listening to the birds, and trying to remember what inspired this share tonight. Getting ready for bed here. There's true lived experience, my story. Sitting on the couch in my room. My room is the living room that I made into the bedroom because we have a small space and my daughter has the real bedroom. And have some candles going from my meditation earlier. There's my daughter right now. I'm actually podcasting. Do you want to come in and say something? Okay. I'm going to keep this live. Just let it flow. All the moments, from the flowy, graceful ones to the bumpy, choppy ones, are part of our story. Just like the polarity dance, the editing process, that's the ego. Trying to edge God out, trying to say, no. I want it to be smoother. This situation made me feel like cringy. I want to edit this out. God says, why? Just let it all be what it is. I'm not sitting here judging it. And neither is your soul. Who is actually judging it? Who is judging it? And that's why stepping into that place of just being the witness is so, so powerful. Like, I feel like that is that God essence. That is the soul essence. We have to merge that with this ego personality self. right? Without edging God out. Because the God, the divine, the creative force is everything. And when the white flag is raised and the ego surrenders, there is this sense of serenity. There's a wordlessness. It feels like this deep, undying peace. And that's ultimately like where the soul lives. And I think what the ego is striving for, but in a way that it feels like it has to be clever and creative and unique, when really it just has to get out of its own way. So on that note, I'm going to let the birds play and let my ego mind rest tonight and my soul soar as I go to sleep. And tomorrow is another day. Wishing you a beautiful day or evening wherever you are. If this landed for you in any way, please share with someone you care about, because that's how the frequency spreads. I am so happy to be walking home with you. Peace out. Sarah Teresa.